Hi, Peter Boyles. Welcome one more time to the shoot, and this is a good one. We've been sitting here for a while before the cameras got turned on. We started this project, thank you to Mark Crowley and to Brian Taylor and to Kelly Michaels, I don't know, 6-8 months ago, where we brought people in, and we use the term the shoot because of professional wrestling. There's shoots and works, and we called this the shoot. So a few Saturdays ago, and I follow Jimmy on Saturday, Jimmy's on a Saturday morning, and I'm coming into work and I'm listening to these two men as guests of Jimmy talking about Iran. They're Iranian men and they're incredibly wealthy and great life stories. They have done success. As Amir said, he arrived in the United States with 75 cents in his pocket. But I do believe this, and we were getting nods to one another, to attempt to understand the Cold War. And I'm a strong believer, if you understand what happened in Cuba, you can begin to understand the Cold War, having to do with American politics, having to do with Batista, having to do with Castro, having to do with Khrushchev and Jack Kennedy, to understand that moment in time. And perhaps even a better example was the United States in the Middle East. And we were talking about this before it began. We use British colonial terms, Near East, Far East, Middle East. Those are the views of Victorian England. These are the views of the great imperialists. So they would call these people as ours, the Middle East. But to understand, of all the countries in the Middle East, and remember, Israel does not exist, to understand Iran and the U.S. and petroleum. Welcome to the show. They're both very brilliant. The conversation was we probably couldn't show the conversation we were having before it was turning the cameras on. And I hope I do it right. Bob Beck, and say your last name so I do it right.
Kayeni.
Okay, please. And you arrived, how old were you when you arrived in the U.S.?
Well, I was 21 years old when I arrived in the U.S. And like I said, I went to CU and graduated as a civil engineer. Never worked as a civil engineer, but I had formed a few companies of my own until 15 years ago, which I thought I got to slow down. So I got into the real estate and just become a realtor and did some stuff for myself and built a few, and that's where I am right now.
Introduce yourself, please.
I'm Babak Behzadi. I left Iran when I was 16, 4 years after the revolution. I spent a year in Germany. It was difficult to come to U.S. those days. Islamic Republic has taken Americans as hostage, so it was very difficult to come to U.S. I arrived in the United States in 1984-85. Went to high school in Rhode Island, the state of Rhode Island, East Coast. My brother at the time was in MIT, and then he moved to Rhode Island. I lived with him, studied pharmacy, and then my passion was always political science. Graduate school, I studied, took special classes for U.S. foreign diplomacy, 1905 on from Woodrow Wilson.
Ooh.
And then
bad time.
Absolutely. Yeah. And then I entered the world of information technology, pharmacy, and then had my own consulting firm and so on, and presently owns several cannabis businesses.
Again, trying to understand parts of the world, and the world's in collision, or philosophies in collision. Boy, the Middle East is the place you look. We can look at, we were talking about, as bad as Nicholas Romanov was, he was replaced by Lenin and the Bolsheviks. Sure. As bad as Shah was, Shah's replaced by Ayatollah. And they eventually, if history is correct, and it always seems to be, they themselves will then implode as the Soviets did, and perhaps the regime will. And there's a rising right now that we're able to read about. The rising right now inside of Iran.
Yeah. Well, when you look at it and say that, all these people were replaced with another worse one, and we never really had time to breathe.
I agree.
Now, when you go back when Mossadegh was against Shah, they were fighting. Mossadegh just came out with nationalization of our oil, and then there was a coup, right? And that coup happens, and
that's
the Shah
1953.
1953, right? Exactly.
1953.
So the Shah wins and comes in, right? So the Shah, in the beginning, to my knowledge, didn't know what to do. So he had a lot of help from westernized people from other country.
They prompt
it was
him out.
influence, right? They pop him up, right?
Multinationals
Exactly.
and CIA and
then he got to a point that he wants to do good for country. Now he started being smart for all Western and all Chinese and all Russian. He got really smart and he formed OPEC, which was the worst thing he did for himself because everybody went against him at that time because he was using the oil to use the money for the country to modernize the country, which he did. He really did. I would say off of his old system that he had in there, the last 15 years of his monarch, he really did really good for the country. When you look at it, we were going through the modernization, we were changing education. He helped a lot of farmers and a lot of other people that learned how to live and how to be educated. So he brought a lot of students to the United States, paid for their education, brought them back, and modernized the country as much as he could. But right at the end, what happened? Another coup again, right? We bring Khomeini all of a sudden to Iran, and we know what happened then.
Khomeini flees in 1953.
Right.
And he's a young cleric.
Exactly.
Radical cleric. He goes to France.
When the Shah pushed him out.
Well,
Shah pushed him out to Baghdad first. And he was living there. And right after that second revolution happened to Iran, Khomeini was brought back to France with the help of two men that a lot of people say there was a CIA, both of them, Qutbzadeh and Yazdi. So they brought Khomeini into France and hold him up there. And when the coup happened, Khomeini pushed the country again, and they start popping him up.
I'm going to back it all the way back out. You mentioned Woodrow Wilson. So the Shah's father, and
Reza Shah.
Yeah.
1941, the Allies get rid of him.
Yes.
British and the Americans. because remember they all go to Tehran.
Yeah.
To sit down and talk.
Exactly.
And Stalin.
Right.
And
Yes.
where did they go? They went. They went to Cairo. They went to Tehran. They were in Yalta. They chose Tehran.
Sure.
Right.
And it was really an influence of Joe Stalin.
Right.
Yes, absolutely.
They were.
He was a strong man.
Absolutely. Yeah. So then they decide. They bring the Shah, baby Shah. He's not baby Shah.
He was 19, 20.
Yeah, he was a kid.
Yeah.
Put him on the throne, on the peacock throne.
Right.
They didn't want to. British didn't want to.
No.
They were anti-Pahlavi family. So if you don't mind, I go back a little bit. So if you look at the history of Iran, in 1906, the constitutional movement of Iran, which is modern, they want to go for modernization, a new judiciary system, modern judiciary system happens. And the movement, sometimes you see the movement of women even in there. And the most important thing at that time was to keep territorial integrity of Iran in one piece because it really didn't exist. The British certainly made sure of that at the time.
Sure. I have this theory,
Yeah.
anywhere that the British once were, there are problems today.
Sure.
Oh,
Sure.
of course.
No, but
Thank you.
Kuwait,
Of course.
Kuwait and Iraq and first war, U.S.
Oh.
war. Kuwait was carved out of Iraq.
Yes.
And so having said that, when the constitutional movement happened, it was towards modernization and industrialization of Iran. The price that we paid was the political freedom did not come with it, right? If you give it three, like a triangle, one was territorial integrity, one was progress and industrialization, and freedom of politics or freedom. This was sacrificed.
Sure.
So move on. Sure. Reza Shah, with the help of some of the British, because it was the interest of British, they brought this charismatic man as a Kazakh Reza Shah, but he also had his own charisma and followers. He took over, and then he went towards nationalistic views in Iran, modernization of Iran, and then he turned against the British. Move on to, and if it continued that way, World War II didn't happen, Iran would have been in a different situation. Once the World War II happened, Iran got annexed.
But I ask you this when this began. If there was no oil in Persia or Iran.
1909, Darcy found oil in Iran, right. If there was no oil, so I always put it this way. it's like a young guy says, the reason I'm not successful is because my father left me a lot of money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So that's not, that, I don't agree with that.
Yeah.
Not only you should appreciate
It's not a problem the three of us have.
Exactly.
Or Mark, the four of us. Yeah.
So if the people knew how to use their money properly, and then they were smart enough, they certainly would not, look, right now, can the superpowers influence Sweden? Can the superpowers influence Japan? No. Simply because, yes, Iran was an interest for the British and superpowers and at the time, but you got to understand, in politics we always say, it's not what I want, it's what I can achieve, sure. Right? At that point there were certainly deals made for the Iranian oil. Oil was underground, the technology was in the hands of the West, the engineers were in the West, the technicians were in the West, the oil tankers were in the West, so you got to give some of your oil to gain those, right? But try to get the best contract you can. On the other hand, the British or oil companies, they would not want you to get the best deal because it's to their interest.
But how did the Saudi Arabians, and I'm not a big fan of the Saudi Arabians, the Saudi Arabians played that card quite differently. You know, they were willing to, there's a wonderful book called The Formula that I recommend to people to read, but they're in, there was when there were seven sisters of petroleum, now there's five. And they're in a boardroom in London. It was like Royal Dutch Shell, and somebody starts to tell you, they go, well, now the Arabs, and the chairman says, stop, we're the Arabs. You know, and he's this Anglo,
Saxon,
multi-billion-dollar head of a multinational. He said, we're the Arabs.
We're the Arabs.
And so, but how were the Saudis? They played the game so much differently.
I'll tell you how that happened is Saudis were not under influence of British. Never.
They want them in.
Right?
Oh.
So what happened at Mossadegh time, British was taking all the petroleum out of Iran. They even had a big, huge petroleum, in Iran. So what they did, they were taking the oil out and building park and pools for us. And Mossadegh comes in and says, hey, we could do that ourselves.
Yeah.
So why don't we just, even he, on a first offer was 49 to 51.
Yeah.
Iran was giving him an offer that take 49, give us 51%, we'll take care of our own country and our own modernization. So British did not agree with that.
Never do.
So Mossadegh shut them down inside Iran, and they came to United States. British diplomatic people came to United States. At that time, Truman was the president, right? So they told the Truman that if you're not watching, Iran is going to go towards Soviet Union and become
that's
the
what
communist.
they sold that. They sold that.
Right, they sold that. No, he didn't buy it.
Yeah.
Truman didn't buy it.
Yeah, I know.
Truman says, no, Iran is a Muslim country and they
that's
would
exactly
never go
right.
to, right?
Because of the one plank of atheism.
Exactly.
And they said, no. They said, these people are devout. They're not going to accept Marxism.
So what did British do at that time? Because they got shut down, right? Yeah. So what the British do, they backed up, waited until his term, Truman's term was over, and Eisenhower came in. And with the help of Eisenhower, they made that coup in Iran. Yeah. That's what happened. So when you ask why Saudi Arabia is playing his cards so good, because they never were under the influence. British was so busy with India, Iran, Pakistan, and all those people.
But also the Saudi Arabians in the Arab world learned their great lessons from the time of Lawrence and back to what you said, Woodrow Wilson, Clemenceau, Lloyd George, the job they did on the Arabs, and then they seize Egypt, and the British, and so, no. But I have always pondered that the Sauds don't let them in, and they're already in Iran.
Well, yeah, they were British were so busy on that part of the country that they never really paid that much attention.
And the big oil.
At that time, Saudi Arabia wasn't
I
anything.
Agree. No, I agree. They were mud huts.
Yeah, it's all desert and nothing was really interesting. And then that gathering together after World War II with the Russia, Iran, and a few other countries, they came in Tehran and they sat down and
they dictated.
They dictated everything. Yeah, so really, Mossadegh wasn't a type of a man who could have really get on top and run the country. That wasn't his job. He couldn't do that. So what happened is, because he had a lot of religion influence in him, he couldn't really do anything, because otherwise the country would have gone to what it is today.
Yeah.
Right?
But when you guys were kids growing up, did you go to mosque and were you?
I grew up in an agnostic family.
Okay,
So I never
all right.
ever.
Okay.
My family were religions but they never really hard,
Well,
core
people told
practice.
me that, for instance, under Saddam, you want to go to mosque, fine. You want to go to church, fine. And it wasn't until they turned him into this guy that
Well, Shah was the same thing.
precisely.
Yeah, Shah was the same thing.
yeah.
Actually, Shah's problem was because he was religious himself. Otherwise, he would have get rid of Khomeini when he could. He just exiled him because people want to be Muslim.
A lot of guys left.
Right.
A lot of
so
guys
he pushed him, and he was safe.
But he was this young cleric.
Right.
So, how much does Shia play out with Sunni when you guys are young men? And we hear a lot so much today about the Shia.
If you look at, again, we go, because I want to speak about this fundamentally. Right? 1906 constitutional movement brought modernity, progress in Iran, tolerance in many ways. Still, you see sometimes amongst families between Shiite and Sunnis, but the laws...
Did you know any Sunni kids growing up?
Oh, of course. I grew up in southeast Iran, in Baluchistan,
Yeah,
and I grew up with the Sunnis, right?
yeah.
So, but it's all about the judiciary system, right? If the judiciary system gives you the same rights as the other, you start, sometimes you feel marginalized. However, in modern judiciary system, your rights are being protected. Being a Sunni, being Baha'i, being Shia, being a non-believer for that matter. And this continued on. When you mentioned about Mossadegh and what happened in Iran, 1909, when the RC found oil in Iran, this is before Reza Shah, right? So, and the Qajar dynasty literally was under the thumb of the British. In 1919, they almost brought in a contract to be signed, which Iranians did not allow it, but at that time they brought in to become a colony, just like India of England. And people did not, although it did not get signed, British had a lot of influence. When Mossadegh came in, as you said, so he gave the independence psychologically.
Sure.
Let's put it that way. Psychologically independence, which we certainly deserved it. Sure. But the independence from powers, you have to have leverage. We didn't have the leverage. Okay?
And again, this is a moment, it's happening in Ireland. Gandhi's in India.
Absolutely.
It's going to happen in Pakistan. It's going to happen in Egypt.
Of course.
Yes.
These
With
are ways,
Farouk on
and
the
each
phone.
country goes different based on
But they do the same.
their
But they
perception
do.
of freedom.
People want to be free,
Absolutely.
and they want to be away from the British. And they want
Dostoevsky says the knowledge, the freedom has a cap, ceiling, and it depends of how much knowledge the society has. Thus, the ceiling of the freedom will go up.
change the language, change the culture. And they were trying to make the Irish British, and they weren't. They're Irish, and the same thing happened to your people. That
Absolutely, in Iran. So, as I said, if you put it in perspective, in Iran there were four groups. You had the socialists under the influence of the Soviet Union. You had the Islamists, the political Islam as we call it. You had the National Front, which was Mossadegh, and you had the Shah, right? Shah and Mossadegh are in the same team, supposed to be, right? Because they both want to go move forward, progress. However, the tactics were different. As Barry Rubin put it, is independence product of technology or technology product of independence? Mossadegh was saying that we first have to become independent, then we can move forward.
same thing Gandhi said.
Exactly. On the other hand, Shah said no. Sell the oil, sign the contract, bring the money in like Japan, right? Build industries, and you become independent. That was the difference. However, at that point, you also got to understand, sure, we have oil. Sure, there is interest of the West, and they want the highest benefit that they can get. What do you have in leverage, right? You have oil on the ground. However, you don't have technicians, you don't have engineers,
No.
you don't have drilling, you don't have refinery.
And the British made sure of that.
Exactly. Well, yes, of course, that's their job, right?
Yeah,
Because it's to their benefit.
no.
However, when you do that, as I said, politics is what I can achieve today, not what I actually want. You know, that's utopia does not exist. So at that point, Mexico, about 10 years ago,
They nationalized.
right, they nationalized. And the best deal at that point was given to anyone was what is known as 50-50. Well, because Mossadegh was a little bit stubborn.
If I could back for a
Yeah.
moment, but the Mexicans, they had to break the hacienda system, they had to break the church.
Exactly.
And I mean, to be able to do that,
We had our own
the whole.
scandals.
My point, of
Sure,
course.
sure, we
of
had
course.
all, but you got to, as a politician, right? As a politician, you got to understand. Most of, and I'm not trying to push for Shah or Mossadegh. All I'm saying is the struggles that had. Mossadegh administration, right, was not on the same page. Some of them have never left Iran, right? They don't even know what the world in politics is asking and how you can come to agreement with them, right? They really didn't. Makki,
Well, they weren't politician at all. You know,
so
they had no
what
idea.
when you are part of the government, you're supposed to, right? So that they didn't do that. And when U.S. administration took over and they said, look, what is it Mossadegh want? What's the best deal you can give him? He accepted it verbally. Because the socialists had influence on him. The socialists were under propaganda of Soviet Union.
And they couldn't control those guys.
Right, and he could, and they basically changed his mind. They basically, and then when it came to coup, right, that's when the coup happened.
But the Shah leaves, he flees.
Yes, he went
Yes,
to
he does,
Italy. Yeah,
Yeah, he
they
goes to
pulled him
Italy.
out
Yeah.
because the situation wasn't right for him. It was just
Yeah,
it-
but he
because he was a
leaves-
young man, and
listen.
this Mossadegh was just had a lot of power,
I know.
and so they have to make the situation right for him. So he pulled him out, sent Eisenhower cousin went to Iran at that time.
they all went.
So Roosevelt, I'm sorry.
No,
so
so
what
he's a part of all kinds of deals.
right?
The Roosevelt side.
He glorified it.
Yeah.
To be honest with you, if you look at it, when Roosevelt came in, CIA was formed just a
OSS.
couple years before, right?
Yeah, it was OSS.
And he glorified it just to increase the budget. Look, you cannot have a coup with a few $100,000 in a country in the morning.
No.
A few $100,000
One day.
scramblers in one day.
One day.
So that's actually insulting the Iranian people if thinking that couple of hooligans with a couple of $100,000 overthrow government. So for 2.5 years, Mossadegh could not sell 1 liter of oil.
Well, they did it to him.
They couldn't. They wouldn't let him, right? They wouldn't let him. It was sanctioned. So when you can't, you run on a slogan that we're going to be independent, we're going to sell Iranian oil, and we're going to do it all ourselves. Okay, hungry stomachs can only go for so far on a slogan. 2.5 years, the economy is in shambles. Shah keeps telling them to sign the contract. We need the money to build it. You know, even your own followers will eventually turn against you because their stomachs are hungry. You haven't sold a barrel of oil, and you're not bringing any money. At this point was when the coup occurs.
But the Shah leaves.
Shah leaves,
Shah
yep,
leaves,
yep.
and he and it's CIA, MI6,
Right.
multinational corporations. I understand also in my reading that the multinationals were creating huge environmental crimes around the the oil, and they were just destroying the land, and I mean there's total disregard for the people that lived there.
But then look, when it comes to these companies, you're talking 60 years ago. Clearly, the environment isn't in their mind. Presently, even present today, when Iran right now needs about $70 billion to redo all the oil wells, right?
Don't get it.
They're not even putting money in there,
don't get it.
and they're destroying the oil wells. You know what I mean?
But again, go back to Mossadegh, because Mossadegh looked at the agreements that the profit agreements or the wealth agreements. It was so upside down. I mean, they were raping
Yeah.
Iran for its oil.
Before, yes. They gave him 5 contracts.
Yes.
But when you got the 50-50, it was the best contract they could have got.
What are they getting now?
Right now, they're giving it
What
away.
were the Saudis getting?
No. Oh, no. Iran was better than Saudi
Yes.
Arabia.
At that time?
Yes,
that time. I thought that
absolutely.
the Sauds always had a good deal.
No. The
right.
deal
Yeah.
that Iran got was better than Saudi Arabia. It was. That's when I say 50-50. So the
They
five,
had Iraqi deals, Iranian deals, they had
Mexican
Saudi,
deals,
Kuwaitis,
Mexican.
they had
So,
everybody. Yeah.
But the deal, that's when I say when the president came in, he says,
Okay.
okay. And he was Democrat president.
Okay.
He said, hey, what is this Mossadegh stuff? What does he want? They said, man, this guy, you can't get rid because he was old and he was stubborn. Reality, right? They said, well, what does he want? So he wants better deal. This is the best deal we can give it to him. And he was known as 50-50, right? And that's the best deal he
What
could
was
do.
it before he?
Oh, anything between 30s and 40% for Iran, the rest
No,
for
it
the
wasn't.
others.
It wasn't even 30.
I thought it was lower than that.
No, that was the
lower
old
than
Reza
that.
show. It was 19% now.
right.
That was
After Reza Shah.
before that
Okay.
coup. It was with the British.
Well, they got
and
rid of
then
him.
they got rid of him, and so that's what happened. But basically, I think what happened in Iran at that time, it was a matter of people not being educated, people not seeing what was happening to the country. It wasn't like because the CIA was smart or British was smart, because we were dumb.
Remember the same group of people does it in Guatemala, 1954.
Right.
They overthrow Arbenz, duly elected,
Right.
but he wasn't. He was the multinationals were the fruit companies.
Sure.
Well,
They
Peter,
wanted him out. He was
what-
gone.
But those are the policies that you see in, what today we call them nation building. Those are the policies of at those times, right?
Well, no, I'm saying.
You're right. And after, so don't forget though, after the Cold War created, you got orbits, right? What's in the orbits of the West? What is in the orbits of the East? How do you protect your chips? How do they protect their chips? And when Soviet Union failed, we were talking about Soviet Union. When Soviet Union fell, it was actually a long-term economic war between United States and Soviet Union.
Absolutely.
Who were in the orbits of United States? Saudi Arabia, Iran, Qatar, Kuwait. Who were in the orbits of Soviet Union? Albania. You look at the South Americas, they're hungry, right? They don't have money.
Cuba.
Castro, Cuba,
That's
right?
my early set of understanding Cuba.
Exactly.
Yeah.
So when you have players on the West, and these are their buddies, these are their friends, right? And then you have the Soviet Union that has to inject money into the other countries. Castro, right? So in a long period of time, Soviet Union eventually fell because besides the ideology, overextended, and under its own weight drops.
And I also believe this, and you guys are fabulous. I'm sitting here and go, wow, this is really great. The Soviets couldn't keep up. And when Joe Stalin kept the wall up, nobody could see the other side. When people started hearing the Beach Boys and seeing Mustangs and listening to rock and roll music and seeing clothes, they wanted it.
Yeah.
Sure.
And it's one of the things I think that Ayatollahs or the religious fanatics don't want to see people have a good time.
Well, it's just like what I like to call it is a public secret.
Thank you.
It's a public secret. Everybody is unhappy.
Yes.
But nobody is really voicing his, They're
afraid.
They're afraid.
Right.
What did the dictator do?
But that's what I love watching Iranians in the street now.
Yeah.
The Iranians
it's
want to be
unbelievable, because
Iranians want to be South Korea. The government wants to be North Korea.
Wow.
Right.
That's
exactly.
great.
Yeah, it is.
That,
it
because,
is. What it is.
what's the thing they said when the old Soviets says somewhere, someplace, somebody's having a good time.
Right.
And we got to stop that.
That's
Right.
exactly.
That's North Korea.
Right.
They
But
never have a good time.
we talked about all this history that's happening, and if you really leave Mossadegh and Shah back in and come back forward to the next revolution that it happens to Iran, what we're happening is just the same exact thing is happening. We're repeating the history,
That
right?
always does.
It's the same thing.
Yeah.
And then now what's happening now? People went through 2 different sessions of revolution.
Yes.
They got smart. Now, those revolutions had leaders.
Yes.
Mossadegh and Shah, Khomeini right here, and now no leaders.
Yeah.
This is much better because they cannot control the leaders. What it is committee. It's people doing it themselves.
No one would have dared gone in the streets under Stalin.
Okay, exactly.
Okay, but they
Exactly.
did under Gorbachev.
Right.
Yes.
But what what my point is being that because this revolution that is happening now doesn't have a leader, they can't do a shit about it. I'm sorry, my
No, that's
language.
okay you say that,
But
but-
it's just basically
that's-
nobody's to control.
And so it's going to go one way. That's the Bolsheviks. Everybody's in the street because of the war, because of the Tsar and everything. And getting out of the train is Lenin. And I don't know what. I mean, I read your nation as much as I can, or your country. Who's going to be in charge?
Well, that's the beauty of it.
Yeah.
Don't
I agree.
get me wrong. Let me explain. It's the beauty of it. Because this time, nobody's deciding for us who's going to be the
I
leader.
agree.
Now, these people, among themselves, inside of Iran, they know what they're doing.
Yeah.
What does dictator do? Always. Under two things. Silence and separation. If they always dictate that to make that happen inside so they could dictate, right? So the silence and the separation is happening to Iran right now. The government is trying to separate people, trying to make them silent by shutting down all the social media. But people are smart. We go 2 weeks session, 2 weeks session, and then it's way. They go 2 weeks in the street and they make all this noise, right? Who are they gonna quiet? Who are they gonna separate?
They don't.
They shut them down.
Yeah.
They quiet for 2 weeks, and they get break, and then they start again. And that's why this revolution is gonna happen.
Oh, there's no
And
question.
this time it's
going
gonna be beautiful.
Yeah. Well, a lot of people are going to get hurt.
Oh,
Of course. You got to
course.
pay
They're
the
not going to
price.
let that go.
Right.
Peter, when the governments, ideological governments, and the government of Islamic Republic still is a revolutionary government.
Oh,
They're based on
and will be.
Yes, and they
It's
will
like-
be.
it's
Right.
like-
Their foundation is
yeah.
based on anti-Westernization. That's the
Chinese army is still the Revolutionary People's Army. Castro is still the revolutionary.
Absolutely.
They got to keep
But
that.
But the
revolution,
religion is
yeah.
always against modernization. If you look at it throughout the
Always.
history,
Always.
even in this country.
Oh, of course.
What happened? We finally said we're separating church from the
Well, Jefferson knew it.
yeah, right.
Jefferson knew it.
And that's the beauty
And there
of
are
it,
people today that want it to be the same again. I said, do you have any idea how crazy that is?
Yeah, if
We have that in the world. And communism is a religion.
Absolutely. Ideologies. When we say
do, yeah.
ideologies with a big I, we started in the 19th
It has
century
saints, it
and
has
moved on.
holy men, it has
fascism,
it has
all of this.
yeah, it's all.
Now,
Yeah.
the Islamic Republic does not have anything to offer for the future of this generation.
No.
Right? When the government fails to have a
They never
future
did.
for the society finds its own
Path.
discourse.
Yeah, no, of course.
And the discourse today we see is pro-West, progressive, woman, life, freedom, which I even say is as close as liberty, life, and pursuit of happiness of U.S. slogans, right? And when the society finds its own discourse, and it's profound discourse, and it captures the society, and it does not have any tie-downs to economic of the government. It's an explosive situation. No matter what the government does, these guys are not afraid of the bullets or paying the price. It's been going on for 100 days. And when you see the progress in Iran today with the new generation, last week China, that is, so Iran is a stooge of China, and so Russia, right? Last week, China signed a contract with Saudi Arabia and signed a letter to the Iranian government that do not interfere in Saudi Arabia's matters, plus the 3 islands that belong to Iran. China said that belongs to UAE.
That's right.
So what this means is they are seeing a dead horse that they will not bid on. That's first. Right? Unfortunately, the present administration has not seen that yet. The Europeans have. Germany, a few years back, owned basically half of the Iranian industry. Thus, they would turn a blind eye anytime Islamic Republic did a terror or kill somebody of the opposition in Europe. Now they're doing less than $1 billion worth contracts with Iran. Germany, England, France, all of these countries.
Isn't that not true when? And I just want to be in a room when John Kerry walks in to meet the mullahs under the.
Javad Zarif, yeah. I mean, Javad Zarif should be in a tribunal against the humanity in Iran. And John Kerry sits with a guy who is representing the government. That is separate
the same class.
Support terrorism.
Oh, yeah.
Gender apartheid, right? And killing American soldiers
When I read
in the proxy wars.
What I read was the hardware for the military and for aviation under the mullahs had, and so Jimmy Carter, who people I don't know if they know this or not, Jimmy Carter seized all the assets.
Yeah.
And he kept them. They were frozen assets.
Obama gave it back to him.
Yeah.
But what they did was, I've read this and I don't know it.
No, it's reality.
It was
$200 billion.
it was all the multinational arms dealers and airplane manufacturers. They said,
AWACS.
and they said the money went this way and came right back to the U.S., to the multinationals. So the money never really left America. It just got transferred. And that was something that, and so I read, and I don't know it to be true, that the pressure that was put on the Obama administration because, okay, say Iranians, we'll go buy it from the Germans. We'll go buy it from the English. We'll buy it from the French. Oh, not so quick. We want to sell it to you.
Right.
And so that was one of the
Well, then this happened right at the version of one of our revolution that is going to be a green. They call it green revolution.
Oh, absolutely.
And Iran was they can't. You know, what do you do to really get rid of a government? If you really push the economy. You know, put a sanction on them. That's a very possibility.
They tried
that
it.
They
did it to Saddam.
Right.
Yeah.
So what happened at that time is that Iran economy was so bad that it could have crushed any minute, and all of a sudden,
boom,
there is Obama and his
well,
fund right into. I have a friend a relative actually, who works in an airport in Iran. He said, I'll tell you something that you don't believe it. They were forklifting dollars.
Oh, I believe it. Sure.
From the
They tell the same story in Afghanistan.
Right.
They were taking bundles off the backs of helicopters and giving them to the warlords.
And
bundles of hundreds.
And you're so right.
Tommy Frank saw it.
You're so right that when you say the money went and came back,
went right
so
back.
right. What happened is, you know, if you go back when the Shah was in power, I bought dollars to come to this country.
Okay.
I bought it 1 to 7.
Right.
I mean, $7, 7 Tuman was $1.
Right.
Do you know what it is today?
No.
1 to 37,000.
I believe that, sure.
Yeah.
That's
Right?
why I'm sure, of course. I mean,
And
it's,
I understand the inflation. I understand all
That's
this,
an-
but we're talking about, my God,
Yeah.
how would you really
Stagflation.
survive with this?
can you guys go home? Can you ever go home?
I cannot. I'm politically active.
The last time I went there was like about almost 7 years ago, and I had some difficulty, but you know
They know who you are.
they're not-
They know everything.
Yeah,
Yeah.
and then I got out.
No,
so
I'm a member of political party.
Yeah.
I cannot.
Oh, okay. That explains everything. No, you can't go home.
I cannot.
No. How? This is such a special show. I want to do it. Wait about a month and a half. You guys come back because you're great. Your history lessons are incredible. What happens?
I believe after this continues, which it will, Iran is going to become militarized.
Okay.
That's my assumption.
That's like a North Korean model.
Well, more like China.
Okay, all right.
Because the economy, they already run 80% of the economy in Iran. Thus the sanctions against IRGC. Militarized, then we're going to have pressure and rifts within the military falling apart because they do not have the people's support by any means, right? Killing Qasem Soleimani was perhaps one of the best help that could be done to people because he had the charisma. He could hold the military or paramilitary together against the Iranian people. The present generals, no, they do not have that charisma. They're not charismatic and they cannot hold it. Even Iran becomes militarized, there will be a rift among the IRGC.
This beginnings of a revolution in the streets of Tehran now and other places have lasting power? Can it really affect the future of the country?
This time, I really believe yes. It's because people are up to their neck. And there's so much pressure on people that the economy for people is really, really bad. And people are pushed to the street because they have no other choice. So this time, they are really not calling for any leader, or they're not calling for anybody to come in. They are really shouting what? Women, life, freedom.
Yeah.
They're all generalized. It's not, this is once to in every country. Women's are, it's not one little thing. It's everywhere, right? Life is, what do we want from life? We want to have a freedom, right? That's your natural born right to be able to live the way you want it, right? So what do they get in Iran right now? You know, they can't breathe, they can't work, they can't even socialize. I mean, they can't even wear clothes that they want. They have to be under the, restrict religion, power. So what do they have to lose now? They are using that slogan to get out of this. And I think once we get rid of this religion panic, and just be done with it, which we are going that way, then we could build a country. And I don't think, I mean, Babak says it's a military. It could be military, but I don't think military even has a power to do it.
Wow.
Like he says, there is nobody on top of the military that it could do anything.
It's short term.
Maybe a very short term until they decide what they want to do.
There's history theories are so attractive to me, but there are these theories about when do men revolt and why?
But they're together. Don't forget.
Yes.
Although the women are spearheading this, men are behind them, and they're right in front of us also. It's the whole society. All the social economic layers of the society are involved in this.
The suggestion that historians have is when men, which is universal, men and women, get to their knees.
Sure.
No one revolts on their back.
Nope.
But when they're climbing to stand, that's when the revolution happens. And it's true in this country. We've been talking about the British since the show started. What did we do?
Exactly.
Threw them out.
Exactly.
And so, for what reason? For the same reason.
What would you do if they kill your sister as a man?
Yeah.
What would you do if they kill your wife?
Yeah.
What do you do as a man?
That's just
Then you
happened.
stand up, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
You stand up to your, what doesn't matter anymore.
when you've
What's
had
going to
enough.
happen to you, right? Yeah,
When you've had
enough is enough.
Yeah. Do you see, final question, do you see our country going that way and this people going this way?
In the United States,
Yes.
this is over the years that I've been here since 1986, this is the most divisive society
I agree.
I've seen, unfortunately, and I believe the future politicians should come towards the center. It is not good for democracy. It is not good for freedom. Because the United States still is the greatest country on the face of the earth, providing, as I said, I arrived here with 75 cents in my pocket. I had every opportunity.
Did you
in
speak
life.
English when you got here?
I knew words.
Yeah, okay.
I knew words.
Okay.
I learned it in high school. So it has its own flaws, but it is the best country in the world. And I think people should be more see the cup more full.
Oh, man.
than empty.
All you got to do is spend a lot of time reading, a little bit of time traveling, go,
You get that?
same thing.
It's just basically, it's not the government, it's not the system. I think modernization of anything, when you're looking at it from the outside, you want it, right? So look at Iran, but you said, are we going different direction? I think we're going the same direction.
Good.
What happens is people are looking at the United States, looking at, Europe. They want what they have. Yeah. They don't know what's really happening, but they from the outside, they like the freedom of what they see. So they are really getting together and, coming
That really
together.
was the theory why the Soviet Union failed. It didn't fail because
Economic.
it failed because people wanted
want what they like.
And there was a reason Stalin never let anybody see anything on the other side of the wall.
When Woodrow Wilson made the speech at the time, and he basically lost because the Soviet Union moved forward, said it is the ideology and the natural way the people feel, and he put a religious tone into it. However, Soviet Union at that time moved on and even the economy grew faster. However, because it really didn't provide what the people wanted, the natural way people want to live, fell under its own weight.
Yes.
In
It
wrong-
imploded.
Exactly,
Yeah,
it
no,
really
it's true.
did.
No, it's true.
Absolutely did. And you know, they used to say, they asked the workers of Soviet Union, they say the government pretends to pay us and we pretend to work.
Sure.
Iranians presently, they say, you know, we pretend to live and the government pretends to care.
Yeah. You know, and this is, you guys are brilliant. And that's the reason why Kim in North Korea never lets anybody see anything. And what was your line? I don't know if we did it on the show or not, the line about North Korea that you applied.
Well, you know, government of Iran wants Iran to be like North Korea.
Yeah.
The people of Iran want to be like South Korea.
Yeah, there it is. And I'm going to steal that. That was the most brilliant thing that's been said through this. And this was a wonderful, wonderful shoot. To Mark Crowley, thank you. Come back.
Thank you.
Because we just began, and I sit around with people that I just respect their sense of history and politics, and I'm going, wow, these guys are good, and you're great.
Thank you.
We'll do it again. Happy New Year. Thank you very much for
Happy
watching.
New Year to
yeah,
everyone.
you too to everybody. And
Yes.
be safe, everybody. See you next time on The Shoot, and I'll see you on Saturday mornings at 9 on 710 KNUS. Thank you.
Thank you.